Wait, why do we need to leave the room?
Okay. We have another room in that building with beer.
Wait. Why do we need to leave the room?
Imperial wants us to, I think.
Who's the Imperial person who wants us to leave the room? Raise your hand. Let's stay here, and whoever needs the room can go to the other room. Yeah. Let's take questions here. If there's someone who actually needs the room, talk to me, and we could go to another room. It's probably better. Yes, question over there. I'm just going to raise the energy in the room for 1 second. Cool. I'm glad you guys are here. My name is Cliff Weitzman, and I'm the CEO of a company called Speechify. I am extremely dyslexic, so first, second, third, fourth grade, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't figure out how to read. And I have 4 younger siblings who are very smart. My sister Alex speaks 7 languages, and she has an app called Amori. If you're single, go on Instagram right now and type @Amori. It's the best dating app in the world. She did her master's in artificial intelligence at Stanford. She did her undergrad in symbolic systems. My brother Tyler started making apps when he was in 3rd grade. He built 47 iPhone apps by the time he was 17 and had 2 in the top social networking category of the App Store by the time he was 17. He skipped 4.5 years of math in high school, and then he did his undergrad in math at Stanford and his master's in artificial intelligence. And I couldn't figure out how to spell my last name. And when I was a kid, like in preschool, I wanted to be prime minister. I grew up in Israel. I wanted to be prime minister of Israel, a billionaire, and a pop star. All 3 at the same time. And I figured, if I want to be able to do at least 2 of these things, I have to be able to read. So I used to practice reading a lot. And it just didn't come naturally to me. And the thing that would always happen is I'd go to the public library and I'd practice reading, and I'd fall asleep inside of a book. Who's had that happen while at Imperial? And my teachers thought I was slow. And my parents thought I was lazy, and I thought I was awesome. I just need to find a way to prove it to people. And I did not know I had dyslexia. So I just decided I was going to figure it out. And I developed a system that at the time I didn't have a name for, but today I have a name for. It's called brute force. It's when you don't have an elegant way of solving a problem, so you just outwork every single other person in the room until you get to the solution. So as a 4th grader, I stopped watching TV. I stopped hanging out with my friends. I stopped playing video games. And all I would do is sit in the public library until I fell asleep reading books. And the librarian would wake me up. And I was the least smart, nerdy person that you'd ever seen. And eventually, I started to be able to read books in Hebrew. And I remember crying one night because it was 3 in the morning, and I'd stayed up reading a book. And I realized that I didn't fall asleep, and that I could follow the plot enough to the point where I didn't want to go to sleep. And to me, that was like the most magical thing in the world. I was like 9 years old at the time. And then I got diagnosed with dyslexia, and my entire life changed. Because for the first time, I had a place to hang my hat. And I could be like, you see, I'm not lazy, and I'm not stupid. My brain just works a little bit differently. No surprise, I also have ADHD. And then I moved to the United States. And I was 13, and I didn't know how to speak English. And the way I learned English is I ended up listening to Harry Potter audiobooks 22 times in a row, whereas today I still have the first chapter of Harry Potter memorized cold. My first vocabulary words was Alohomora and Hogwarts, but that's how I learned how to speak English. And in 8th grade, I had to have my mom read my summer reading books to me. And in 9th grade, I had to have my mom read my summer reading books to me. And in my first year of college, I had to have my mom read my summer reading books to me because I was not very good at reading. And even though I could read a book, I was very slow. And my luck is that I found these things called audiobooks. And I fell in love with audiobooks. And at the time, audiobooks sucked. So what I had to do is torrent all of my audiobooks off of Pirates Bay. Who's used Pirates Bay before? There we go. That's the most hands that have gone up so far. And I became obsessed. So I listen to about 2 audiobooks a week, every week, 100 audiobooks a year, and I've done that for the last 17 years. What I learned is that I can listen a lot faster than I can read. And I don't need to ask you to raise your hands. All of you can listen a lot faster than you can read. And if you don't know that yet, you're welcome. So here's the trick. Humans have been listening for hundreds of thousands of years. We've only been reading for a couple thousand. Reading is a hack that we invented, where you see a bunch of letters on the page, and you use phonemic awareness to figure out how to convert those letters into sounds in your brain. Some people, about 17% of the population, are very bad at doing this. And so in the end, when I got to university, I built a tool for my computer that would read out everything to me. It was a Mac app, and I could highlight text, and I'd click a keyboard shortcut, and it would read. And then I got a bunch of handouts, so I built an app that let me take pictures of whatever I got, and then it would parse them, and then it would read. And then I built a thing that would do the same thing for PDFs. And I built a thing that would do the same thing for my emails, and a thing that would do the same thing for my Wikipedia or anything I wanted to read. So I'll give you a chance now. If you have your iPhone, you can pull it out, type Speechify. You can download the iOS app, the Android app, or the Chrome extension. That was not a company. That was a hack. I did build 36 different products when I was in college. Everything from 3D printed skateboard brakes to iPhone apps, websites, payments companies, even fabricated solar cells. Technically, my major was renewable energy engineering. I took most of my classes pass-fail in the last 2 years of university. And I was very passionate about renewable energy. The only problem is I realized it would take about 7 years to actually bring something to market, and I don't have that level of patience. And I suck at computer science. I'm really bad at it. And the reason I'm bad at it is because my spelling is horrible, unsurprisingly. And so if I would type a variable one way here and a different way here, surprise, the program breaks and it doesn't run. And so I got introduced to this thing called hackathons. Who's done a hackathon? If you haven't done one, Google one. You should go do a hackathon. If you want to build companies, it's like the best thing that you could do for yourself. And I realized that if I go to hackathons, I didn't need to know how to code. I just needed to know how to talk. Because I could go to a hackathon and then jump on a table and be like, hi, my name is Cliff. I have an idea for this app. And people would join my team. As long as I didn't break tables. And so of the first 8 hackathons, I won of the first 8 hackathons, I won half of them. I won 4. But the problem is I go back to school, and no one would continue coding on the thing. So I realized that I had to learn how to code. The problem was I wasn't very good at it. And so I took the first computer science class I ever did at Brown. And most people took 3 hours to finish the first assignment. It took me 15 hours. And the more advanced assignments took even more longer. And so what I ended up doing is I would show up at the computer science lab with 8 peanut butter sandwiches I had made earlier that day. And I would sit there from 9 a.m. until midnight, sometimes 2 in the morning, every single day for about a month and a half, until I started to be able to tell the difference between a bug that was actually a bug to do with coding and a bug that was a bug to do with spelling. And after that, I realized I was actually really good at computer science, just not at coding. And so I'm good at thinking about algorithms, and I became one of the best people I've ever met at debugging. I'm so good at debugging because I had so many bugs. And later, I ended up teaching computer science, and I was the instructor everybody wanted to have help them because I could solve their bugs pretty quickly. And I realized that though it would take me years to boron dope solar wafers that I cooked in an oven and did all the physics for, I could build an app called Starter Pack, which you can still download on the App Store, which got about 200,000 downloads in the first 30 days of being live, and it took me about 7 hours to build it on a plane ride from Boston to San Francisco. I was like, software is a lot faster than physical products. First lesson, computer science is easy. It doesn't matter how stupid you are. It doesn't matter how slow you are. You don't need to be good at math. You don't need to be good at physics. You don't need to be good at science. You just need to try. And you don't need to spend 15 hours. I'll give you the shortcut. I took only 3 computer science classes. They were very helpful. They didn't teach me how to build apps. They did not teach me how to build websites. The way I learned how to build apps and websites is I went on a website called Udemy. And I found a course by this guy, Rob Percival, who was a math teacher in Cambridge. He has a beautiful accent. And he made 24 apps. MVP clones of Tinder and Snapchat and Google Maps and Uber. And I would see how he coded, and then I'd code the same thing. And then I'd see what he did, and then I'd do the same thing. It's called the Complete Web Developer course. It's 19 hours. And I just did everything he did in the 19 hours. And then I took another course called the Complete Web Developer course. And then I learned how to make websites. And the reason I call myself a bastard engineer is I'm pretty good at physics, I'm pretty good at mechanical engineering, I'm okay at electrical engineering, and I can be dangerous when it comes to computer science, but I'm not the best. If I tried to code on Speechify today, I'd get kicked out of the room. But you've got to be able to build your own MVPs. It's 2022. Like, if you want to start a company and you don't know how to code, I will laugh at you. You don't need to be a genius. You just need to put in the time. So here's all you need to do. Take 4 weekends and dedicate the entirety of those 4 weekends to doing YouTube tutorials or Udemy tutorials on how to make an MVP of an app, and you'll be able to make an MVP of an app. And so if you want to build something for web, go learn TypeScript, learn JavaScript, learn React, learn Node.js. If you want that again, I'll say it again, but write it down. Learn TypeScript, learn JavaScript, learn Node.js, and learn React. If you want to build an iOS app, learn Swift, or you can use React Mobile or Flutter. And if you want to build an Android app, you can use Flutter, or you can use Kotlin. Don't bother engineers until you learn how to do stuff yourself. Then hire other engineers. Boom. Solve the #1 question that people ask me, how do you hire engineers? Learn how to code yourself first. You don't need to be a genius. Just be dangerous enough. #2, it's very easy to learn how to use Figma, right? So back in the day, people used to use Photoshop, which is a pretty good piece of software, and then there was Sketch. Sketch is amazing, but Figma is even better. You could download Figma for free. You don't need to download it. It works in the browser. And again, take one weekend and take a course on how to use Figma. And if you have any idea for a website or an iOS app, sit down, take a piece of paper and a pencil, and draw the app. If it's normally going to have like 20 screens, figure out how to make it in one screen. The first MVP you launch should have one screen, whether a web page or an app, and just build that. And use Figma to make the UI, and then build the actual product. And then bring other people to do it with you. Cool. That's like the basic tutorial on how to start any company ever if it's going to be a software company. And if it's going to be something that's a little bit more oriented towards business, here's how to do it. I wanted to build a business called Empower. And what I ended up doing when I was in university is I hired 10 freelancers in the Philippines to find and apply to scholarships for me full-time. And I made a Google Sheet. I numbered it 1 to 100. And I hired a bunch of people to work on this project for me. And I wanted scholarships for people who are Jewish, from Marin County, studying energy, studying math. And I uploaded every essay I'd ever written to a Google Drive. And I just had them fill this whole sheet with scholarships that were relevant to me. At least $5,000 was the minimum amount that I would win from the scholarship. And I applied to all of them. And I had like a 2,580x return on investment in the first 60 days of doing this project. And I was like, whoa, this is great. So I built a website called findmescholarships.com. And you could check out with Stripe. You'd pay me a couple of $1,000s, and it would automatically hire people in the Philippines and automatically generate these Google Sheets for you. You don't need to be technical to build this. Just make the Google Sheets yourself, right? You don't need the database in the beginning. Just have a Google Sheet. So if you want to make an app that will rate the best restaurants in London, don't make an app. Make a Google Sheet with a list of the top 100 restaurants in London and see how many people visit the Google Sheet. That's your MVP. That's it. Very easy. Google Sheets actually is the MVP for 85% of the projects that I hear. OK, I'm going to stop about the technical stuff, and I'm going to go into a little bit more stories. Why Speechify? Cliff, I heard you say that you built 36 products in college. Why this one? Towards the time when I was going to graduate, I figured, you know what? I don't think any of the things that I built so far are going to be billion-dollar companies that are going to generate $1 billion of revenue per year. So I decided not to go ahead with them. And I decided to be a visiting scholar at Brown, which is a term I found in the constitution of the school. I didn't know anybody else who was a visiting scholar, but turns out that I could keep my student ID, I could keep my student email, and I convinced them to let me stay on meal plan and live basically on campus. So I just stayed as a fake student for about 6 months, and I just built stuff. I built Chrome extensions, I built iPhone apps, I built a bunch of different things, and I read a lot of books. And if you ask me for one piece of advice of everything I'm going to say today, it's read books. It's the most important thing in the world. And so if you Google Cliff Weitzman Medium, you'll find a list of the top 100 books I most recommend. Specifically, I recommend checking out The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss and Traction, which are 2 excellent books. And if you want to go deeper, I recommend Nick and McKee, Ethics by Aristotle, and Thus Spoke Zarathustra by Nietzsche. I really like the concept of the Übermensch. And I kept thinking about what I wanted to build. And my conclusion was I wanted to build something that was easy to build in terms of UI, UX, use some technology that didn't exist 4 years ago, so nobody else could have built it. And I wanted something that did not make money off of ads. I wanted people to want it so much they'd pay for it themselves. And around this time, I started reading technical papers about the narrow applications of deep learning. And I realized that there was a bunch of really interesting stuff going on around speech synthesis, optical character recognition, transcription, translation, natural language processing, recommendation engine, and generative AI. And I was like, great. I'm going to put all these things into this text-to-speech app that I built. And then I started sneaking into conferences for people with learning differences. And when the keynote speaker would finish speaking, I would jump onto the stage, plug in my computer, demo, security wouldn't kick me out. And every time I finished, a dozen school heads would offer to fly me out to their schools to teach their kids how to use Speechify. And so I just would fly around teaching kids how to use Speechify. And that's how I got my first 1,000 users. Very easy. But like seriously, it actually is easy. If you want outsized results, do things that other people are just not willing to do. The next thing that I did that was most impactful is I found the top 4 Facebook groups of people with dyslexia and ADHD. And I found the same thing on Reddit. And I started making YouTube videos about dyslexia and ADHD. And I made it a goal to post on every single one of these groups a video about what I was going to make with Speechify. This was before Speechify was actually good. And so I made a video, and then I used After Effects to make it look like Speechify was like way better than it actually was. And I made a group chat with 4 friends who I really respected. And I was like, hey, by this date, I think it was by December 15th, I'm going to post on 4 Facebook groups and 4 Reddit groups. And if I don't, I will do 200 push-ups and 300 pull-ups the next day before 9 a.m. And if I don't do that, I'll run 10 miles that weekend. And the deadline came. And Reddit was very annoying because it thought I was a bot. So I had to make like 4 Reddit accounts to actually do it. But I posted this video. And I just made one simple web page. It had the video. It has the ability to check out with Stripe. Anyone can do this very easily. And a couple people prepaid for the product, $100. And I was like, yay. I've determined that people are actually willing to pay for this product. And the next thing that I did is over the next few months, I challenged myself to code for 5 hours a day to work on the product. And I used this thing called Rescue Time to measure the time on my computer. And every day I didn't code for 5 hours that day, I was obliged to do 200 push-ups and 300 pull-ups by 10 a.m. the next morning. So I did a lot of push-ups and pull-ups, and if I missed that, I had to run. So I got good at running. But eventually, I built a product. And the next thing that I did to acquire users is I went to all those groups, and I decided I would write a book publicly online about my experience with dyslexia. And I gained about 40, 50,000 followers of moms of kids with dyslexia because I wrote this. And every day, I'd publish 300 to 500 words, and I would link the old post with a new post. And people really resonated with this story because they'd rarely heard about someone who was public about the fact that they have a learning difference and was doing something about it. So you asked earlier, how did I find my why? This is how I found my why. I really needed something that did this. And above everything else, my goal in life is to be the person that I needed most when I was young. And the thing I really needed was someone to read my books to me. And I was really lucky to have a mom who would sit with me and actually do the summer reading book with me. And a dad who would do the same thing. But most people don't necessarily have that, right? Their parents are busy, their parents are working. My parents were working too. Sometimes they'd record themselves on a cassette tape, and I would listen to the cassette tape over and over again. And text-to-speech was invented in like the 1960s. Text-to-speech came around before the internet. And I was like, well, at the time it was like 2015, 2016. If I'm not going to build this, nobody's going to. So I better just build it. So how do you know what to pick? What idea? Pick the idea that if you were not to build it, nobody else would. Not just because it's like the newest, most exciting NFT or the newest, most exciting like generative AI project. Like build something that if you did not exist, it would not exist. And build something that people actually need. And I think if you do that, you end up being very happy. Not only that, you end up retaining on your own product. So people talk a lot about product market fit. And the thing that people should talk about more is founder product fit. Build something that you really love, that you really need. So I use Speechify at least 300 times a week. At least statistically, I read 300,000 words per week with Speechify. And I listen at about 700 words per minute. So like this is the notes for my speech. This is what it sounds like.
Hi, my name is Cliff Weitzman. I'm going to debate the energy in a moment for 1 second. After that, I'm glad you guys are here. Let's get started. Well, my goal today is to make sure that the information in this talk will at some point will impact the ultimate creative life, and you're significant about the information you learn sitting down here. Start with a quote. Develop the strength to do bold things, not to endorse.
Oh yeah, I forgot. So I was going to start with the quote, which is develop the strength to do bold things, not to endure suffering. And so that's basically what I ended up doing when I was a kid. I forced myself to learn how to read. I forced myself to learn how to do computer science, right? I forced myself to learn how to design. And I forced myself to learn how to listen fast because I really wanted to engage with books. I just didn't have the opportunity to. By the way, my dad is 66 years old. And he always told me that the thing he wished for most in the world, other than us being happy, is for a remote that he could click it and mute me. Or at least slow down the rate at which I spoke. But my dad is now a huge Speechify user, and he went from listening at about 250 words per minute, the average American reads at 200 words per minute, to he now listens at 450 words per minute. So my dad doubled his listening speed with Speechify, and he's 66. So if you guys are in your 20s, you could definitely start listening at 800 words per minute. It's just a matter of practice. Okay, so that's the first. So now like there's 25 million people who use Speechify. There's like more than 100 people who work on the team. There's 72 engineers. We have the iOS team, the Android team, the API team, the web team, the Chrome extension team, the finance team, the backend platform team, the growth team, and the AI team. A lot of teams. Let me quickly talk about how do you motivate your team. And then I'll talk about how to hire your team. And then I might open it up to questions. So when I started, I was a solo founder. And I really believe in the sentence, which is, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go with a team. And so for the first 30-some products that I built, I mainly built them by myself. Because no matter how hard I tried, like, I couldn't get other people to move at the speed and consistency and pace that I wanted to move at. And when I had to like force people to come do the work with me, like, yes, we made progress, but like that's a lot of energy that is associated with trying to force someone else to do something with you. No. What you want is someone that pulls you out of bed, right? That makes you stay up. That's when you know you have someone who could be a co-founder with you. And I just didn't find someone like that. So I just learned how to do the things that I needed to learn how to do. As I kept going and going, I did find people like that. And so they became the early team at Speechify. When we were 25 people at Speechify, 18 of the folks who worked with us and still do were either CTO, CEO, or VP of engineering at the company they were at beforehand. Typically, they were Series A or Series B founders who had companies anywhere from like 30 people to 300 people. So the first person, his name is Simeon Kostadinov, and he's from Bulgaria. And what I ended up doing is I posted on Instagram and Facebook and Reddit and Discord, hey, I'm working on this product. I need someone to help me with this media hack. Here's what I want to do. Anyone have time to help me? And this guy messaged me, and he did it. Like, he messaged, I think, about like 15 reporters to have them write about Speechify. And then I posted again. I was like, hey, I'm working on the Mac app and the iPhone app. I'm looking for someone who's good at HTML and CSS, and they could build this thing for the website. And he's like, hey, I'm happy to help. And I was like, great. Sent him the sketch file I had built. I went to sleep. I woke up in the morning. It was done. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And he helped me with a couple more things. And eventually, I got him a visa, got him an apartment, booked him a ticket. He moved to San Francisco, got him a green card, which was the thing I was proudest of when I was 23 years old, is getting Simon a green card. And Simon started as an intern, and like a general intern. And then he taught himself iOS with one of these courses, and then he became an iOS intern, and then he became an iOS engineer, and then he became head of engineering, and then he became head of recruiting, and then he became head of operations, and now he's COO of Speechify, and he's 25 years old. And there's many stories like this at Speechify. Jan, who leads a lot of the ads team, joined us when he was 16. There's 20 people who report to Jan. And so we don't care about pedigree. Like, I really don't care if you went to Stanford or Harvard or you worked at Google or Facebook. I care about four things. Number one, you learn fast. Number two, you have fire in the belly for the product and high loyalty to the team. And I care that you're able to ship features fast and move metrics. At Speechify, there's 4 core principles that we hold: speed, extreme product quality, leading with love, and frugality. And that's what we care about. So the heart emoji is the most used emoji in our Slack. And we literally tell each other, I love you. There's about 112, I think, people who work at Speechify right now across 22 different countries. But 7 of us live in the same house. And we'll get a new house every 4 months in a different city. So right now we're living in Fulham. We'll be here for another like 2 or 3 months, 3 months. But before that, we lived in New York. And before that, we were in Miami. And before that, we were in LA. And before that, we were in San Francisco. And before that, we were actually here again, and Germany before that. I just think that if you're in your 20s, it's like the time to explore the world. And we work like 80 hours a week, so I don't have time to like peace out and go somewhere. So I just do it with the entire team. And then we have like executives that we hired from like Amazon and other places, and they live with their families in Seattle. And 4 months ago, we went 4 of us and lived in Rajiv's house with his 2 daughters and his 2 guinea pigs for a week, and it was amazing, actually. And then every once in a while, we'll travel. So last week, I went to New Delhi for 3 days, and I worked with the engineering team there. And 2.5 weeks before, I was in Paris for a little bit and worked with the team there. We hate meetings, so I abhor the idea of having a meeting where one person is talking and a bunch of people are listening. That's like, I would never want to be one of those people. So meetings are typically one person, or a screen share where people are actively working together. How do you motivate your team? So I hate managing, despise it. I love leading. So what does leading mean? Leading means that we have principles that we follow. So when I was 21, 22 years old, I wrote a 30-page paper about my worldviews, and I distilled it down into the 24 things that I believe that most other people don't believe. So a good example is love is the most important thing in life, and the more you give of it, the more you have to give. It's like fire. You can light one candle and it'll light many other candles without extinguishing the original flame, or like a jug, if you pour water out of it, it gets bigger. Or if with a small period amount of time, you can significantly improve someone else's life, do it. A principle is only a principle if there are something that you're willing to sacrifice in order to have that good thing happen. And so at a certain point, Simon distilled my principles into company principles, and those are the things that we follow. And then we set gigantic, big, hairy, audacious goals, and people work towards their goals. So we have a KPI sheet, key performance indicator, and there's like 115 cells in this gigantic Google sheet, and every person commits to what thing they're going to deliver this week, this month, this quarter. And they fill it out every single week. And if they succeed over and over, they get promoted. If they don't, they're on a performance improvement plan, and they'll be not part of the team if they don't continue performing. I have people's back completely. So I have 4 younger siblings. They are my best friends in the world. And there's a great word in Tibetan called mudita, which is the opposite of schadenfreude. Mudita is the feeling of joy or well-being you have from the joy or well-being of others. Not because it positively impacts you, but because it's just amazing for them. And so that's how I think about the rest of the team at Speechify. I just want to make sure that their lives are wonderful. So for the first 25 people at the company, I used to get on a call with them and like do their nutrition, like set up their macronutrients for them, and like give them like a workout plan, and suggest like the books that I would most read if I was them. And I still do this all the time. Like my favorite thing is helping people immigrate to the United States. At this point, we've gotten something like 4 O1 visas, like 7 H1Bs, several TN visas, several J1 visas. Like not because people necessarily ask, but because I think it's a great thing for people. So I go out of my way to do it. And so if people feel that you really care about them, they'll join the team. And especially in the beginning, no one joined Speechify because it was like a cool education dyslexia company. Like that's not very sexy. People joined because they were excited, to be honest with you, about working with me. Because I made a bunch of YouTube videos and I wrote a bunch of Medium articles, and they'd read my principles and be like, wow, I have a similar vision for the world as this random person across the world, even though he lives in San Francisco and I live in Bulgaria, you know, many hundreds of thousands of miles apart. There's something that connects us. You know what's crazy about me and Simon? He's my best friend. I knew literally no one who knew him when we started working together. 0. But we worked together remotely for 3 months, and he was amazing. When did you decide to do this full time, and why Speechify, right? Why not like the attachable skateboard brake? Couple of things. Number one, I validated that people were willing to pay. So the premium subscription for Speechify is $140. It's about to move to $200. So if you want to get it now. So I validated that. Number two, it was the fact that deep learning was iterating so quickly that I knew that I had the opportunity to build a 10x product. Number three, I knew that if I didn't build it, nobody else would. I gave a talk like this 5 years ago. And someone told me, asked me, when do you think you're going to get to 1 million users? I think we had like 10,000 users at the time. And I told them in 3 months. That did not happen. We got to 1 million users, I think, 3 years in. It's very easy to stick with something where you're succeeding. It's very hard to stick with something when you're not. And 2 years into Speechify, we had really big problems with bugs. And bugs kill startups. And I didn't know what to do because the retention was very low. And so in the end, what I did is I exported a list of all of our users. I didn't have their phone numbers, so I used their emails. And I just assumed that they were their Apple ID emails. And I just sat in a chair for an entire week. And every single day, I would call users. I'd send them a text to their Apple ID. Hi, this is Cliff from Speechify. Can I give you a call? And then I just called him. And I was like, hey, what's your name? Beth. And Beth would be like, who is this? And I'd be like, hey, this is Cliff from Speechify. You use our app. Click. And people would hang up on me a lot. Or they tell me how terrible the app is, right? Like there's this bug and that bug and this bug. And every time you hear someone telling you something like this, when you've worked on something for 3 years, it's like getting punched in the stomach over and over again. It's like people telling you your baby is ugly. And like, it's not like a punch in the stomach, it's like a punch in the soul. So it was very, very emotionally draining. And Simon would come and he would massage my shoulders and he'd like give me a chocolate chip cookie and he'd be like, 10 more. And then I'd do 10 more. He'd be like, 10 more. And then you can have this brownie. And what I realized after talking to about 300 users is that the app was actually really great for some of them. And there was good retention. It's just like in the rare cases that people didn't have a bug. So we just worked for another 1.5 years on making sure that there were no bugs, and then we got that. and then we launched the Chrome extension, and then we launched a bunch more, and then now it's been the #1 product in its App Store category for about 3 years. It's the #1 app in its category, above the New York Times, above the Wall Street Journal. It's the #1 text-to-speech app in Chrome. We recently closed partnerships with the top 8 trade publishers, so we can now sell audiobooks, which is very exciting to me because I love audiobooks. It's because we just consistently talk to our users. And the most important thing that I did outside of the team, in terms of like product development, is in the early days, I put a gigantic button that says help or message us. Like huge button, like it accounted for like 10% of the screen. And if you clicked it, it wouldn't send you to like an email address or like intercom. No, it was my personal cell phone number. And if you messaged it, I would personally respond. And then later I added other people to the point where my iMessage broke. Like I couldn't use iMessage for about a year because so many people had messaged this number. And it didn't matter if it was 3 or 4 in the morning, like I would support your ticket and I would call you and I would figure out how to solve it. And that's how we fixed all the bugs. And so the key is listen to your users. We talked a little bit about hiring. I wanted to make this a little bit more tactical for you guys. We talked about how to learn how to code. The last thing I'm going to talk about is running ads, and then I'm going to open up the questions. One of the things that worked really well for Speechify is we had a subscription, and people were paying for the product. And what I did is I made a list of the top 100 best performing consumer subscription companies in the world, and I messaged every CEO, every head of growth, and I messaged them on email, on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and if they didn't respond, I just kept messaging until they finally responded, and then we'd hop on a Zoom call, and if we made friends, I'd fly to wherever they are. Like, I'd literally go to Copenhagen, I'd go to Tel Aviv, I'd go to Berlin, and I would sit behind them in their office, and I would see how they bought Instagram ads. And I got really good at buying ads. And then I made a list of the top creators. Logan Paul, Mr. Beast, Ali Abdaal, Yes Theory. And like, I'd go to Jimmy's house, Mr. Beast, and I would sleep there for a week, and I'd like get to know the entire team and see how they made content. And then I'd go and I'd be like, cool, okay, I need to learn marketing now. I wrote the top 60 ads I'd ever seen, ever made, right? Every Grammarly ad, Dollar Shave Club ad, Old Spice commercial. And I'd literally find a horse and I'd do the Old Spice commercial, but about Speechify. And I'd find ways to make them interesting. And now we do about 300 million ad impressions per month because we just make really good content that converts. And like you figure out the business funnel. And so the key here is, as a CEO, you have 3 roles. Make sure there's enough money in the bank. Make sure that the right people are sitting in the right seats, so you have to be great at recruiting, and set the vision. As a founder, your #1 role is to learn. You learn how to code. You learn how to design. You learn how to talk to users, right? You learn how to run ads. You learn how to do copywriting. You learn how to make good videos. And what I typically do is I'll read every single book there is about the topic. Obviously, I read it with my ears using Speechify. Duh. Why would anybody read it with their eyes? Just take that beautiful little PDF, 300 pages, 10 seconds, and boom, you have a beautiful audiobook. Narrated by Snoop Dogg or Gwyneth Paltrow, whoever you want. Download Speechify on the App Store. I'd read 100 books about the topic, and then I'd talk to every expert about the topic, and then I'd rewrite, like I'd throw everything I learned out that I thought was stupid, and I would rebuild it in a new way. Because here's the thing, in like growth marketing, the way you win is you found arbitrage. You find the thing that most other people are not doing, and then you do it really, really well. And the same thing is true from like the technical perspective as well. This year, my brother Tyler joined Speechify. He ran an amazing company called Black SMS for a long time. It allows you to password protect and encrypt your text messages. And Tyler is now the co-founder of Speechify. Someone asked me about co-founders. But he joined me as a co-founder 5.5 years in. It's just that he's so good that like it didn't make sense for him not to be co-founder. And so the other thing that's very important, and the reason why people keep joining Speechify, is I'm very generous with how I compensate people. Like I make sure that there's a massive win-win. And that's really, really important. Last things I'll leave you with, and then I'm happy to answer as many questions as you want. #1 is develop the strength to do bold things, not to endure suffering. Be bold. #2, if you can't find a hack around something, just brute force your way through it. Like, you are allowed to do that. That's a valid approach, right? So we use speed as a primary strategy in business. Brute force is another one. You got to be able to handle your fear. So one really good trick from the 4-hour work week is to write what the worst case scenario is, right? Let's say I tried to do Speechify and I didn't take the job at Google and I didn't take the job at Goldman and I didn't take the job at McKinsey. Well, like worst comes to worst, I can go sleep in my bed in my parents' house, but let's say they thought like I was a complete failure, they didn't even want to talk to me anymore. There's probably like 10 friends I could sleep on their couch for like a week each. and then I could like learn how to be a slightly better engineer and get a job as an engineer, or I don't know, I could go on the side of the street and do backflips and like try to raise money. Choose when to go ham. Going ham is like literally like nothing is going to stop you. You're on a rampage. And you can't do that for too long. You can do it for a couple of days, but like there are moments to do it where you should do it. In life, there's always a way of circumnavigating an obstacle, and typically it's by finding the person at the top of the governance structure and getting them to give you a special exception. You know, there's this thing called IQ that many people talk about too much. There's EQ, which is emotional intelligence, but the most important one that people don't talk about enough is AQ, adversity quotient. It's how good you are when things get really, really difficult, and this is the number one most important factor in whether you're going to be a good founder or not. So how do you build good AQ? The most important trick is to build a really good support system. So when I was a kid in like 3rd, 4th grade, I moved around a lot. And I had an accent, like you couldn't understand what I was saying at the time, and I got bullied. But the beautiful thing is I had 4 younger siblings and 2 amazing parents, and they gave me unconditional love. And I knew that no matter what happened, right, I was always loved. And so if you have that in your nuclear family, that is amazing. That's the number one thing that will make you succeed. And there's a direct correlation between how successful or badly Speechify is doing and how frequently I call my mom. Even when Speechify is not doing well, I call my mom on a regular basis, but I call her like multiple times. If you don't naturally have that, that's okay. You live in 2022. You can make friends with people from Bulgaria and Egypt and all around the world. And the best way to make friends is just give love first. Say I love you first, right? If you're a guy, you can say I love you to a guy. Girls already know this. They say I love you to each other all the time. Be there for other people, and then they will be there for you. And hey, if you do that with other people who are founders of awesome companies, eventually they'll probably join your company if you do really well. And if you don't, if you suck in the outcomes, they'll do everything in their power to have you join their unicorn company. Develop principles. So think from first principles. What are the things that you believe that other people don't? And then make them your operating principles for the company too. And then most important, above everything else, read books. Because no matter how smart you are, there's a lot of people who have done it before you, right? So Benjamin Franklin has an awesome autobiography, right? Same thing for the... Why didn't we do this in the beginning? Alexander Hamilton's biography, Arnold Schwarzenegger's biography, right? Even fantasy books like The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, right? Like develop main character energy. And the best way to do that is by reading books. And so, I welcome you to go to speechify.com/bookstore, and you can get any book for $1 now, because we just launched audiobooks. All right, thank you for listening.
I know we have a lot of questions for Alexandra, for Damien, for Cliff, but we have to leave the room right now.
Wait, why do we need to leave the room?
But we have a very, very, very good news.
Okay.
We have another room in that building with beer.
Wait. Why do we need to leave the room?
Imperial wants us to, I think.
Who is the Imperial person who wants us to leave the room? Raise your hand. Let's stay here, and whoever needs the room can go to the other room. Yeah. Let's take questions here. If there's someone who actually needs the room, talk to me, and we could go to another room. It's probably better. Yes, question over there. Okay, how do you know when to pay yourself a salary as a CEO of a company? You should pay yourself $60,000 a year if you're the CEO of a company, or whatever is the normal rate for the city that you're living in, so you don't care about money. You should do that when you have either generated enough revenue or raised enough money where that is reasonable to do. So let's say you've only raised $100,000. Do not pay yourself $60,000 in salary. But if you raise $600,000, it becomes reasonable to pay yourself $60K a year. So make a target for how much you want to raise, and then when you've raised that target, then it becomes reasonable to raise it for yourself. And the way to do that, if you're a seed stage company and you don't yet have a board, find an external advisor who is legitimate, right? Someone who you can consider like a CEO coach, and then send them an email, hey, how much should I pay myself a salary? And then they'll tell you, 60K, 65K, whatever, and then you have an email thread that's good, and that's what you do. So I have 5 pillars in my life that I always make sure that I maintain. Number 1, I count my macronutrients. So I eat about 1.3 grams of protein per pound of body weight. I eat about 50 to 60 grams of fat per day, and if I'm cutting, 130 grams of carbs. If I'm bulking, like 300 grams of carbs. That's number 1. Number 2, I work out every day. Number 3, I need to listen to audiobooks, otherwise my brain turns to mush. I spend time giving love to other people. I spend time writing music or listening to music. Those things are important to me. They come before everything else. You'll notice that there are things that are not important to me, like, for example, sleep. But for some people, that does need to be in your pillars. So figure out what you need to operate well, and do not compromise on those things. And then that'll help. The other thing I recommend is doing an elimination diet. So I like took out dairy from my diet for like a week. I took out gluten from my diet for a week, and I saw how my energy modulated up and down. I recommend doing that too. And then work with something that you love. Learn fast, fire in the belly for the product, high loyalty to the team, which by the way is extremely important. If you are interviewing someone and you get even the sense that they're dishonest or not loyal, it doesn't matter how legit they are, do not let them within a mile of your company. And then they move metrics and ship features. So move metrics is in, let's say you want your install to pay to go from like 4% to 4.5%. Measure them actually according to the results, not just according to what they say. No, I feel like I'm having fun all the time. So Jeff Bezos, when asked this question, talks about not work-life balance, but work-life harmony. This sounds cliche, but if you find something that you love, you will not work for a day in your life, whatever. There are times when I do things that I hate. I hate filing patents. It's so annoying and draining. Eventually, I made a video on how to file a provisional patent. You can find it on YouTube. It has a lot of views. Because I was so annoyed with it, it's like a deranged DMV employee put this thing together. So I try to avoid doing things that take away energy from me. And so what I typically will do is I will hire people onto the team that are good at these things and get energy from it, right? So I'm not the best at coding. My brother's really good at coding. So Tyler does most of the AI engineering. He does the math. He does the implementation. We have 70 other people on the team who do that. I get energy from doing videos. So there's less people doing videos. I do the videos. So you got to do all the things that suck in the beginning. And then when you pass a certain point, just start hiring people to do the things that you don't enjoy. So like I love listening to audiobooks. Someone in the company is going to be responsible for curation of what audiobooks go on the front page. It's probably going to be me because I listen to a lot of audiobooks. So make sure that your job is composed of only the things that you like and not the things that you don't like. So the number thing I'd recommend if you want to learn fast is learn how to listen fast. I'm being facetious, but actually Speechify has an automatic speed ramping algorithm that coaches you to listen fast over time. Download the app on iOS, Android, or Google Chrome. It's just built in at this point. How do you learn fast? Number one is I think of it as having a mental model of the universe in your head. And there's you can think of it as a tree of knowledge. So the trunk is what you learn in elementary school and high school and university. And then there's all these branches that branch off. And every time you read a book or you talk to a person, a new leaf of information can be added to this tree. So the first thing is make sure no bullshit is added to your tree of knowledge. So if you can't corroborate someone else's information, do not add it to the tree. Number two is ask questions, exactly what you're doing. If some random doofus is in front of you, like stating things as if they're fact, don't believe them as face value. Ask questions, direct the conversation, and read as many primary sources as you can, books. Talk to people in real life, and figure out what's on the bleeding edge. So like I talked about earlier, growth engineering, it's all about arbitrage of what is working right now in industry, and like that's how you figure out how to learn fast, because you're learning the things that are most relevant. When I was an undergrad, I took about, like most of my courses actually, I was missing like anywhere from 2 to 8 prerequisites. And I would just talk my way into the class, take it pass fail. And I was okay coming in last, as long as I was in a room where I was the least experienced person. So like challenge yourself in those ways. I don't listen to news. I don't read news. I read a lot of history. Like my favorite podcast right now is this great podcast by Ben Wilson called How to Take Over the World. And so it's the summaries of the lives of like Napoleon, Alexander the Great, Edison, whatever. When it comes to technology, like, Tyler did his master's in AI. So he's like very plugged into what's going on, right? Same thing for Liam or Rajiv or Raheel on the team. We read things that excite us, but we are not led by what the trend is right now. We are led by what is the thing that we want to build. And I spend all of my time talking to users and listening to users, not kind of reading the news. And then as you build and you learn and you grow, you see what's available out there. So for example, like we use TypeScript, not JavaScript, because it's better typed. And so it makes it a lot easier to make progress fast without reaching a bug. Recently, we launched the SDK inside of Speechify, and legitimately, we spent a lot of money and time building the SDK, and it was a hassle, but it's good because it'll let us move faster. So the answer is, how do I keep up with trends? I don't. I listen to users, I figure out what they want, and then I Google around to try and figure out how to build the things that they want. So they wanted to listen with better voices, so we ended up building like on-device voices generated with like Snoop Dogg's voice or Gwyneth Paltrow's voice or whatever it might be. I cannot think of a job that is like that. The best example that I have is if you're a soccer player, like a singer, a dancer, where you literally have a manager who manages you, and those people are legitimately some of the saddest people I've ever met. I'll give you an example. If you ever watched the movie Elvis, which is an amazing movie, this is exactly what happened to Elvis. All he did was like dance all the time, right, and sing. And the thing that gives him the most energy is going to be with people who are not like him, diverse environments, and like getting inspired. But the problem is he had a manager who was basically financially abusing him. He didn't get energy from like the entrepreneurship side. But you gotta learn how to do things that are outside your comfort zone. And so that's the key, is you gotta learn. And growth happens outside of your comfort zone. And by definition, it's going to be hard. And so when you play video games, video game engineers have a really amazing concept called being in a state of flow. And a state of flow, your zone of genius, is when you're doing something that's just like 15% too hard, but you're good at it. So you're little by little gonna improve. The place that is uncomfortable is when you're like literally 200% too hard, right? Me with spelling, me with reading, me with coding. And so the best engineers in the company at Speechify, what they have is this thing that we call mental stamina. They're able to grapple with the problem for 24, 48 hours, where other people would have given up 5 hours in. And so you have, in the same way that you, as a distance runner, you're never going to be good on the first, second, third, fourth, 100th run. You need to put in like hundreds of runs before you're good at your stamina. Do the same thing for your brain to learn new skills. And if you don't develop the skill to grow, you'll be stagnant, and like a shark that's moving in water and stops moving, you'll die. Yeah, Slack doesn't work for me because there's so many people in the Slack. So I personally will use Slack to keep up to date, but I ask people to message me on WhatsApp, iMessage, or email. I will typically I'll send voice notes to people, and I demand that if you send me a voice note, it's on WhatsApp so I can double speed listen to it. I make a lot of videos. We have one all-hands meeting every month, and everybody else talks, and I talk at the end to summarize things that are important. For the people who live with me in the same house, they're all like literally mind meld. They all know what we're supposed to do. I've realized that some things come intuitively to me, but not necessarily to others. For example, the business model for Speechify. So every single time I have a chance to talk to the entire company, I reiterate, here's how performance marketing works. Here's how ad conversion works. Like you need to get 1% here, 5% here, 20% here. Otherwise, the business doesn't work. We have written culture at Speechify, so everything is documented for the most part. We didn't until about 6 months ago because we didn't need to because we were small enough. We grew really fast to like 120, and then we kind of like chilled. And now we're like hovering between 100 and 120 people, and we're going to nail how to do that really well, which we basically have, but I want to really get good at it, and then we'll grow. One of the things that is on my to-do list, how I'm going to grow the most in the next 2 years, is I'm really good at leading a 15-person team in one place, and I'm good at leading a 100-person international team, but I want to be world-class at leading a 1,000-person team. And if you study the best people in the world who are good at leading millions of people, JFK and Churchill, and sadly Hitler, they did it because they used new technology, right? So JFK had fireside chats over the radio, right? Churchill, we will fight on beaches, we will fight on landing grounds, we will fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. They figured out how to use new technology, the radio. So now when I look at people who are really good, they use podcasts, they use YouTube videos, they use writing. So I, a lot of the time, try to figure out how to become a better writer in order to be better at leading international teams. And no matter how hard you try, you never will get the same impact as if you go in person and meet with people in person. So right, a week or two ago, I literally went to India, to New Delhi, and then I went to a city outside New Delhi, and I stayed with the 70-year-old father of our head of engineering. Like, that's such a cool experience to me, right? That is the magic of life, right? Alongside of building something that impacts, tens of millions of people, making in-person connections with people is the most valuable part. And so one principle that I'm also working on right now is getting really good at not letting myself not go to a place because there's friction to go there, right? So like, it was friction for me to come here, right? But I was like, you know what? I'm going to ignore the length of the Uber ride or the length of the plane ride because when I get there, I'll make friends with new people, and it'll give me energy. So that's one principle I've been using a lot lately. I'll start with Speechify, and then I'll say in general. Level number one of Speechify is to build out the iOS app, the Chrome extension, to the point where we have 2 billion people using the product on a daily basis. So we just launched the audiobooks app. We're going to launch Gmail integrations, and there's a few more that we want to launch there. The next thing is because so many people use Speechify, you get to know the completion rate of every single web page, every single email, every single PDF. And so we're launching a repository for PDFs. We're now we built this NLP model that can identify dialogue inside of books. And so we can read it in different character voices. So you can generate audiobooks from ebooks instantaneously. And you can automatically translate ebooks into any language that you want. And I think between like 1995 and 2007, the best thing to own would have been a company of 1,000 engineers, software engineers. And between 2007 and today, it would be a company of 1,000 mobile engineers. And between today and 2050, it'll be a company of 1,000 AI engineers. So one thing we're doing a lot of is building out the AI team. And so that's one. And then on a personal level, I kind of track all my goals in a Google Sheet, like 1 month, 3 months, 5 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And I have the goals that I have around, the business, adventure, music, spirituality, learning. So one big goal I have is to have a song that I write that's in the top 100 charts on Spotify, because I just happen to really like music. I have like a couple of goals around like tricking and parkour, and a few more about things I want to learn, especially around computational neuroscience.